This critically ill infant will never develop mentally beyond the age of 3 or 4 months. Yet he's been kept alive at a cost of $500,000.
He's got all kinds of machines, tubes, whatever. Why? What is the point?
This is a decision that would have to be made by a group of us, by the physicians as well as the mother or the parents.
So now, the awful decision, live or die, is up to his mother.
And I've never had to make a decision so hard before.
No, it's not George M. Cohan. No, it is not Jimmy Cagney playing George M. Cohan. It is a political relic, a throwback to a time of populist politicians who succeeded with street smarts and knowing which strings to pull. Billy Bulger almost defines Boston Irish.
We had 60 Minutes producer Harry Radliff purchase a round-trip ticket from Nashville to Houston with a quick turnaround, and he paid cash. Less than 15 minutes later, he was approached by 2 Nashville police officers.
Drug interdiction units at airports all over the country pay rewards to airport and airline employees for giving them tips when they think someone might be carrying large sums of money or drugs. It's done every day.
Unlike criminal cases where the government has to prove you're guilty, in forfeiture cases, you have to prove you're innocent.
I'm Mike Wallace.
I'm Morley Safer.
I'm Ed Bradley.
I'm Steve Croft.
I'm Leslie Stahl. Those stories and Andy Rooney tonight on 60 Minutes.
These balls have been specially painted with the 32-step process used to paint the Nissan Altima. It's a painstaking process usually associated with more expensive luxury sedans. But it gives the Altima added protection against chips, dings, nicks, and even the occasional scratch. The Nissan Altima. See it at your Nissan dealer today.
McDonald's Kickoff Payoff. Kick off the new season with
thousands of prizes.
Win season tickets.
You're in my seat.
Win a trip to the Super Bowl.
Easy for you to do.
Play NFL Kickoff Payoff and win.
At a McDonald's near you.
Anna wants me to try something I've never tasted before.
It's the Kellogg's Mueslix.
Don't you just love the way she talks?
The taste of the Kellogg's Mueslix cereal is very surprising.
Hey, this is very surprising.
It's got plump raisins.
They are plump.
The flakes very crispy in the Kellogg's Muesli.
It's crispy.
The crunchy almonds, the brown sugar, and the yummy dates.
It's yummy.
Surprise yourself with the fabulous taste of Kellogg's Mueslix.
No. Kellogg's Mueslix.
Some credit cards charge fat interest rates, but not Discover Card. With Smart Rate, the more you use your Discover Card for purchases, the lower your interest rate can be. Now as low as 14.9%. It pays to Discover.
The White House said this week the president hopes to make a final decision on health care reform by the end of August. Well, just one of the tough questions on the table, how much medical care is too much medical care? For instance, when do today's expensive, high-tech medical marvels help patients live full and active lives? And when do they do nothing but prolong inevitable, agonizing death? As we said when we first broadcast this story 2 years ago, that's a question not just of money, but one of morality, too. We went to the University of Maryland Medical Center in Baltimore, where, during the course of one day and one night, 3 lives hung in the balance. And ordinary people came face to face with an extraordinary question: live or die? This is Solomon Smith. He is a very sick baby. He was born prematurely, his brain only partially developed. Babies like Solomon used to die in the delivery room. Now doctors can keep them alive but often permanently and profoundly retarded, and like little Solomon, forever dependent on machines. Solomon Smith is now 18 months old. He has never been home. And, says Dr. Alice Ackerman, the director of the Pediatric Intensive Care Unit, he never will be.
Dr. Ackerman, what's the point What good does it do to keep this child alive? You say he's never going to develop to more than 3 or 4 months mentally.
Mm-hmm.
He's got all kinds of machines, tubes, diseases, infections, whatever. Why? What is the point?
It may not always be easy to see the point, and sometimes myself and my colleagues ask ourselves the very same question, but we're really not in a position where we can say, we can't do anything else for you. This is a decision that would have to be made by a group of us, by the physicians as well as the mother or the parents.
And this is Solomon's mother, Violet Smith. Despite the handicaps from which her son will never recover, she has insisted that doctors use every bit of medical technology available to them to keep her son alive.
When do you say when? It's not easy.
That's right.
Even though the machinery and everything hooked up is keeping the child alive, the child still has a life. It might not be fully normal like the ones that are running around playing, able to climb trees and, you know, do the normal everyday things, but it's still a life. And I've never had to make a decision so hard before, and I don't know if I'm ready to make that decision.
Tiny Solomon represents a giant dilemma for medicine, and a costly one, too. His medical bills so far have totaled about $500,000. And what about the pain that Solomon may be enduring, and the emotional strain on his mother? Those costs can't be calculated. Dr. Ackerman now believes it is time to give up the futile attempt to keep little Solomon alive.
Do you have the right to suggest to the mother, stop it?
Yes, because I think I can educate her as to the medical implications of what we are doing. And I can say, there's no way I can cure your son. There's no way I can turn him into a normal child.
This is the only child I have. And
So you're doing it really as much for yourself as for Solomon?
I'm doing it for both of us because I want him around as long as possible. But I know he's not meant to be here forever. But I'm not ready to let go. Some people would call it torture, abuse in certain forms for doing this, but I call it love for my child.
And 18 hours a day, Violet Smith gives all the love she has.
Come on, and try to get you some rest. This is gonna be a long night.
While Violet Smith keeps watch through the night over Solomon, machines in another part of the hospital maintain their constant vigil, too. This is Bubba, a patient in the medical intensive care unit. Bubba has muscular dystrophy. Dr. Henry Silverman, director of the unit, says Bubba has been in and out of institutions for many of his 25 years.
I was in there just for a moment a little earlier, and it's apparent that he's been in that bed or in that condition for a long time.
That's correct.
How long?
Years.
Years?
Years. And he's been on the ventilator for about 2 years. He's been totally dependent on the ventilator.
Are you saying that if the
years.
ventilator were taken away, he would expire?
That's correct.
When he's not in the hospital, Bubba lives in a nursing home where his condition has steadily deteriorated, partly due to the normal course of his disease, partly due to the frequent infections caused by the tubes that cut into his body to sustain his life. Dr. Silverman believes that Bubba has just about a year to live. Last year, when Bubba went into cardiac arrest, it took several agonizing minutes to revive him, and he remained in a coma for 2 weeks. Now, he is once again fully alert and able to talk.
He understands everything you say. He's aware of his environment. He watches TV. He understands the TV. He feels pain. He feels happiness. His mental status is totally intact.
And so, while he is able, Dr. Silverman wants Bubba to make some tough decisions. For instance, if his heart stops again, should doctors attempt CPR? If another organ fails, should doctors add more tubes and machines? Or is Bubba ready to say that the pain caused by these procedures just isn't worth it, and he'd rather be allowed to die in peace?
And that's the one thing I'm trying to get the parents to start to open a dialogue with him, to find out what he wants. I don't know what he wants. His parents do not know what he wants, and I think that's very important to know what he wants.
Mm-hmm. And up to now, no one has been willing, really, to put the question.
Well, has been willing or has had the courage to talk about these issues.
Kathy Wilson is a nurse in the intensive care unit. Joan Babin is head nurse.
Do you know Bubba?
Very well. He comes in intermittently, maybe 6 times a year or so. So we know his mom, we know him, we know everything about him, we know what he likes, and...
Okay. Tough question. Straight answer. What should happen to Bubba? Joan?
Bubba. Well, see...
Right across. He's 5 yards away. You know him.
I know him. Okay, if he were my brother, and he's in the state that he is at presently,
right,
where it's constantly in and out, and other things with him medically are going downhill.
Right.
I probably would say don't do any more to him.
Sometimes we forget about quality of life instead of quantity of life. I think that's, you know, it's how many days can they stay alive, not how good is their life while they had it.
Dr. Silverman worries that medical science has spent too much time convincing the public of the marvels of the new technology and not enough time helping families understand when it is time to let go.
Has his family come to grips with this? Have they talked with you with any candor about all of this yet?
I spoke with them last night. They said they were going to come in Sunday afternoon, and
here we are on Friday, just a couple of days.
That's right. And I think on Sunday afternoon, I think they're going to have the courage to talk to him about these issues.
Who's coming in?
The mother and father.
My Lord, what a tough question to have to ask your son, whether he wants to live or to die. Whew.
I think it's harder if you don't know what your son wants to do and you have to decide for them. I think in a lot of cases that is harder to do, because then you don't know what he wants and you have to decide for him.
At the Shock Trauma Center, the decisions that need to be made are painfully similar to those facing Bubba or little Solomon Smith. But here, patients and doctors don't have the luxury of time. Decisions have to be made quickly. Which patients have a good chance at recovery?
Can you tell me your name?
Tina.
Tina, how old are you?
16.
And which are injured so seriously, it's more merciful to do nothing. They arrive by chopper or by ambulance. About 1,500 critical head injuries a year. Victims of drunk drivers, workers hurt on the job, or people who have simply fallen and banged their heads. They are people like Paul Wink. His age was 72, but Paul Wink was much too busy living life ever to think about death. But then Paul Wink fell off an 8-foot ladder outside his suburban Baltimore home. In the operating room, Dr. Isaac Wolf, a neurosurgeon, did what he could, but Mr. Wink's head injuries were extensive and the outlook was not good. Without further surgery, Mr. Wink was sure to die. But even with surgery, chances are he would have permanent brain damage. And that is what Dr. Wolf told the family of Paul Wink. We talked with him just a few moments later.
My father was a very strong person. He was the center that all of our lives revolved around. And we only want what he would have wanted.
And what's the prognosis? What do the doctors say?
That he won't be able to be in this world.
Used to be.
Nothing like he used to be, will never be. Wouldn't even be him.
He wouldn't be able to come home from here.
Never come home from here.
No.
And he can't communicate with his environment. He doesn't know what's going on.
The neurosurgeon who treated Mr. Wink, Isaac Wolf, says if there is any chance for a quality life, he'll operate. But to keep a patient alive, if it's certain that patient will remain in a permanent vegetative state, that, says Dr. Wolf, is not living. Problem is, it's not always easy to convince families of that.
Do physicians try to manipulate families in order to help them to understand that they should give up?
I don't think manipulation is the right word. I think that what your job is to try to help the family understand the situation. You have a family who within 48 hours here had a 72-year-old individual who was alive, wonderful, had grandchildren, interacted with them, and like you said, he falls off an 8-foot ladder and suddenly it's over. 48 hours is a very short time in which to try to understand the fact that their loved one may never be the same.
But for the family of Paul Wink, it was time enough.
And you, I take it, would like to see your father, your husband, taken off the respirator?
If there's no hope, but if that's the only thing that's keeping him here. He's not breathing for himself, then we don't think he's breathing. If the machine is breathing for him, that's not him breathing.
So you're saying to the doctors what?
Let him go when the Lord wants him.
Do not resuscitate.
No.
Don't use any CPR. Don't do anything.
No.
Everything they possibly can to make him comfortable now. But don't do anything to prolong what I can't call this life.
When the man upstairs wants you, you're going to go. We put our trust in the Lord. God wants him now, and that's where he's going.
2 days later, after having been removed from a respirator, Paul Wink died. As for the young muscular dystrophy patient called Bubba, he and his family finally had that talk, and Bubba decided that should his condition continue to get worse, he was ready to let go. Months later, he went into cardiac arrest, and as he wished, he was not resuscitated. And young Solomon Smith, after several more operations, his mother finally decided enough was enough. Late one night, little Solomon died peacefully in his mother's arms.
It wasn't normal to make a luxury car so different looking. But that's how we build the Mazda 929. Because we just thought having something exceptional might appeal to you.
Here's a sport to try. Gillette Sensor has a sporty new look. Sensor Sport. Because it's not whether you win or lose, it's how you look playing the game.
AT&T.
AT&T, without a doubt.
If price were no object, which long-distance company would business people choose?
AT&T.
AT&T. For a few pennies a call, AT&T. Wouldn't you? Come on.
People said they'd choose AT&T 7-to-1 over anyone if price were no object. And now it may not be. Introducing Maximum Advantage. Now you can automatically get AT&T's lowest price guaranteed in writing when your business spends over $200 a month with
AT&T. AT&T, period.
Maximum Advantage from AT&T, the best in the business.
When it comes to basics, Walmart knows you need shoes that'll keep you coming, going, stepping, flirting, strutting, hurrying, studying, and playing. Everyday shoes to get you through everyday life.
Walmart's got them.
All the basics at a price that fits. Great shoes are just a few feet away. At Walmart, always the low price, always.
Their union called a strike. They weren't fired, but they were replaced permanently. It's legal, but is it right? Eye on America investigates tomorrow on the CBS Evening News.
Monday is Big Monday, and Marshall and Karen are making the ultimate getaway.
I don't want to discuss this with you and the Lost Boys until the sun comes up.
Big Wave Dave's premieres Monday.
Coming soon to CBS, Late Show with David Letterman.
Don't you think that CBS Eye thing is kind of creepy?
Yet again last January, Massachusetts legislators elected William M. Bulger president of the state Senate. It's his 15th year in office. You may remember Mr. President, who we first met last September. It surprises no one in Boston when Billy Bulger gets reelected. First of all, because he has power and is not afraid to use it. Second, because other politicians are scared of him. And third, well, in this age of gray, faceless men, it's just plain fun to have a leader with blood in his veins. No, it's not George M. Cohan. No, it is not Jimmy Cagney playing George M. Cohan. It is a political relic, a throwback to a time of populist politicians who succeeded with street smarts and knowing which strings to pull. Billy Bulger almost defines Boston Irish. Everybody! His district is South Boston, home of the legendary boss politician James Michael Curley, whose spirit is alive and well in Bulger. Just watch him hosting his annual St. Patrick's Day breakfast, which begins with a fine Irish anthem,
Heavenly Father.
And of course, a blessing from the parish priest.
Amen.
Father, of course, is one of our best friends, and also he occupies a precinct which is very valuable to us all, because that's where St. Augustine's Cemetery is. You never know the result until the votes have been counted from St. Augustine's Cemetery. And somehow there always seem to be just enough to put you over.
The breakfast is a form of homage to Bulger. Anybody who's ever been anybody in Massachusetts politics pays his tribute by being bludgeoned by Bulger.
My advice is to get here on time from now on.
Ted Kennedy got his when he tried to sass Bulger over where to dump Boston's garbage.
I was wondering where you want me to bring it, Bill. Out of Weston or Wellesley or where is it going?
Hyannisport. Did you know Ben Franklin?
There is nothing he enjoys more than taking on a well-bred Yankee with inherited wealth.
Frugality.
Which makes Massachusetts Governor Bill Weld perfect for Bulger's meat axe.
I bet you never bounced a check. Oh, no. I'll bet you never made out a check.
Bulger's importance is as simple as this. If you want to get something done in Massachusetts, you need him. His fellow senators have elected him president for 15 years, the longest tenure in state history. Bulger knows everything about everyone in state office, and thus knows how to get things done, certainly how to keep things moving.
Those in favor say aye, opposed, no. The ayes have it. The rule is suspended. Third reading of the bill.
Legislators give him what he wants because he knows how to get them what they want.
Let me let you describe yourself as others see you.
Autocratic, dictatorial. Those are the boss. Those kinds of things.
Iron-fisted.
Quick of the gavel. The rule is suspended. The truth of the matter is that this would be a debating society, the Senate, or any legislative body, unless somebody said, at some point, after we finish the debate, and after everyone has had his say, we're going to have some kind of action.
But there is the perception that sooner or later, and generally sooner, Bill Bulger has his way.
On many major matters, I have my way.
When he's not presiding in the Senate chamber, he acts as House historian.
John Parker was the captain of the militia.
The little Irishman from Southie holding forth in what was once the preserve of the Protestant Brahmins. Bulger's a man of simple taste, but does not mind one bit the office he inherited, much grander even than the governor's.
You came in and you said, thanks, you Yankee Brahmins, for letting us use your country. And everybody laughed and laughed. And so, Mr. President, I want to say to you, thank you so much for letting us use your state house. Thank you.
The Gov is only half kidding. Bulger's been ruthless with state appointees who cross him. He'll freeze salaries. One judge lost most of his staff and did not get a raise for 10 years. Such tales only add to his power.
The perception of power is just about the same thing as having power. If people think you have it, you have it.
And you do nothing to discourage that perception.
And there's value in it, for me.
It can be very useful, as in the case of Boston Edison.
Of course. Yeah.
They were polluting the air.
Right.
Particularly polluting South Boston, your constituency.
Right.
What'd you do about it?
I called them in and reasoned with them.
It was impossible, they said. I said, well, you're going to gas very soon. I said, you either go to gas or the Mass Turnpike extension goes right through your plant. I reasoned with them.
When you say, kidding, folks, the extension of the Mass Turnpike will be at your front door, it's a joke, everybody knows it's a joke, but it also enhances the reputation that on the real stuff,
right,
he is going to be that tough.
Yeah. There's something to that. I think it's the healthiest thing in the democracy that the people who are elected are not afraid to assert power. I think it's a very good thing.
Especially for Bulger's favorite things, like the Boston Public Library. When it desperately needed restoration money, he came up with a $35 million bill overnight.
Somehow, when they need the money, they get the money.
As they should. As they should. I mean, it's a bastion of our civilization. People who are reading a book are people whose minds are engaged.
When Father McDonald needed money for the disabled, he went to the Senate president.
And it happened, right?
Well, it happened, yeah. God was good that day.
I, William Weld.
In the beginning, Governor Weld attacked Bulger's backroom tactics.
Congratulations.
But he soon discovered that the wisest thing a Republican governor could do was to get along with the Senate president. And together, they've turned the state's budget crisis around. Away from work, they've become a Mutt and Jeff vaudeville act. Anyone who's been in politics as long as Bulger has, especially in the fertile turf of Boston politics, is bound to be accused of corruption. And reporters here have been trying to pin stuff on him for years. But according to the columnist for the Boston Globe, Mike Barnacle, that chronicler of all things Bostonian, by local standards, he's clean.
I've never heard a story about any lobbyist or corporation having the arm put on them by Bill Bulger.
But what about jobs for the boys?
Jobs for the boys is not viewed, and girls now, is not viewed in his mind, or in that neighborhood, or I think in many neighborhoods when you get right down to it, as corruption. They refer to it as taking care of your own.
Bulger is said to be a champion of that, especially liberal with jobs at the MBTA, known as Mr. Bulger's Transit Authority.
Wacko, step up here.
Wacko Hurley, for example. What a name, what a face.
One word says it all.
Wacko organizes the St. Patrick's Day Parade in South Boston from his office at the MBTA.
Welcome. How are you?
Billy Bulger seems to know just about all of his constituents by name.
This is Kenny. How you doing, Al?
He invites them to his modest home where he and his wife Mary raised 9 kids.
Hi, everybody. Welcome.
What you're watching is old-fashioned Boston politics at work, in which patronage is the first rule of life.
Okay. Just might need a little help. We'll do anything humanly possible.
Boston newspapers blast him for patronage. In return, he does everything he can to discredit journalism in general and the Boston Globe in particular.
It's authentic. He feels it. He hates us. And when he does it, it helps him in South Boston because it's his thumb in our eye, something they have always wanted to do.
The first day I went into office, Marty Nolan from the Globe said, well, Mr. President, looks like a nice day, doesn't it? I says, never mind your trick questions. And we've been getting along fine ever since.
When he gets talking about the Globe, it's almost as if he's going to have to stop and get a venom transplant to continue.
Oh, do I hate that newspaper. I mean, the editorials over there, it has to be an opium den.
Bulger keeps the tension with the press alive by not granting interviews.
I mean, who the hell are they?
And he was reluctant to do one with us, as the former state treasurer, Mr. Crane, reminded him.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that show.
Oh.
You'll wish it was 60 seconds.
What Mr. Crane might have been jabbing his good friend about is the sensitive issue of Billy Bulger's brother, James, known as Whitey, a convicted felon who served time in prisons, including Alcatraz, for bank robbery, and has since become, according to the feds, one of the most feared mobsters in Boston.
He's a big guy. He's a major league figure. Can't get around it.
Does Whitey have the same contempt for the press as Bill does?
I hope not.
Some people might go to great pains to distance themselves, to disown even a brother who went wrong. You've not done that.
No. He's my brother. I care about him.
You see him?
Oh, sure. I encourage him to come by all of the time.
Apart from his convictions, there was little known about Whitey Bulger, but then last year, he made the score of his life, and he turned up here to collect. Whitey and two colleagues had the winning ticket in the Massachusetts State Lottery. The prize, $14 million. But was it his ticket?
No, it was not his ticket. It belonged to, I think, Mikey Linsky, who I think was probably told, you know, a couple of hours after the numbers came up that he had partners, that he had a couple of partners that he, you know, really, you know, couldn't live without, literally.
There was a lot of suspicion. The Senate president's brother wins the lottery. Come on, right?
Sure.
How'd you handle that?
I sort of just met it head on and told everybody, well, you know, when we won, or rather when he won the lottery, that kind of thing. Aha, they'd say.
And now I lay me down to slumber. I pray to heaven I hit the number. If I die before I wake, put $10 on 436-708. My brother wrote that prayer.
The Bulger brothers, the bad one and the good one, seem out of some old Hollywood movie. Billy, the educated classicist who does not own a television, still reads Latin and Greek books. Always a song in his heart and on his lips. And yet, true or not, a shadow of menace.
Now, I don't know of anyone that he's ever done anything to, but there is this myth that a lot of people live with that, you know, if I do this and he doesn't like it, either he will get me or, God forbid, he might say my name at lunch with Jimmy someday.
Morley's going to be good to me, aren't you, Morley? That's how they all start out. I'm your pal. What is it?
Just remember, I'm editing it.
Grab your camera and get out of here.
Billy Bulger says he seeks no higher office, that he's unelectable outside of South Boston, that other world filled with Protestants and Boston Globe readers. But year after year, his colleagues re-elect him as Senate President, afraid perhaps of that power, or of Whitey, or maybe they're just in awe of a masterful politician. The editorialists of Boston may call for his blood, but for Southie, it'll be some time before Billy Bulger's last hurrah is heard.
They'll make you or break you, but they'll never forsake you. In Southie, my hometown.
Your credit line has nothing to do with your value as a person, okay? Sure, Gold MasterCard has a credit line of at least $5,000, but that doesn't make you a better person. Well, I don't know. Maybe it does. I mean, if knowing that no gold card is more accepted on the planet lets you relax and just have fun, then yeah, I suppose it could have some effect. And you can use your Gold MasterCard at cash machines all over the world, so you can get money in drachmas or lire or seashells, so you can tip generously. Which any waiter will tell you is the true measure of how good a person you are. Gold MasterCard. It's It's more than a gold card. It's smart money.
Dear Midas customers, we don't want your family riding around on bad brakes. That's why we'll fix the brakes on most cars the same day you bring it in.
Hey, you know what they're doing in there? Red Lobster's got this enormous shrimp platter. You get to mix and match 30 shrimp for just $9.99. Choose a combination of grilled shrimp, fried shrimp, or scampi. Mix and match 30 shrimp, now only at Red Lobster.
Most of the Earth's surface is covered by water, which means most of the Earth is covered by Princess. No cruise line sails more ships to more ports of call worldwide than Princess, because it's more than a cruise. It's the love boat.
"60 Minutes, a CBS News weekly magazine, will continue.
A desperate businessman breaks into the smuggling trade.
Our last chance.
But when the preoccupation becomes murder, will Jessica alter his career? On Murder, She Wrote. Then he swears another man's wife is his.
Your wife has been dead for 7 years. He's crazy.
Jacqueline Smith, Christopher Reeve, Nightmare in the Daylight, tonight.
Somebody has to be the grown-up.
What are you looking at?
You have a lot of hair in your nose.
I guess it's Dave's turn. Mondays this fall, Dave's World.
This is CBS.
I play the year we were married, 1946.
Wrong.
They're in the air, they're on the ground, even on the door.
I turn 2312 into 5000.
People play Play 4 because it pays more.
I won a lot with a number from the lot.
$5,000 for every winning $1 straight play.
1944.
Wrong.
Hundreds win thousands every day, so play Play 4.
1934.
The daily game that pays more.
1949.
La da da dee dee. La da da dee dee. La da 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 da. Da dee dee. Eternity, Calvin Klein. Da da.
Your gift with any $32 Eternity for Men purchase at Dillard's.
The one and only Channel 4 salutes the one and only St. Augustine.
Some people complain that we never put on anything new over the summer. Well, this summer, I did. So much for that. You're under arrest. Well, maybe not you, but your car, your house, or your money. As we first reported a year and a half ago, it started as a simple idea. Strip the drug barons of their ill-gotten gains, take their most precious possessions, their fat bank accounts, their yachts, their sports cars and mansions, then use the proceeds to help pay the cost of the drug war. Sound like a good idea? Well, Congress thought so back in 1984 when it changed the federal forfeiture law. But if someone were to tell you that thanks to that change, a law enforcement officer can seize your property, your car, your money, without arresting you, without ever convicting you of a crime, you'd probably say that's not possible, not in America. Well, just ask Willie Jones.
Willie Jones runs a small landscaping business in Nashville, Tennessee. Once or twice a year, he goes out of state to buy shrubbery.
A year ago, Jones walked into the airport here in Nashville and paid cash for a round-trip ticket to Houston, Texas. A few minutes later, 2 Nashville police officers stopped, questioned, and with Willie Jones's permission, searched him. They found $9,000 in his money belt, money that Jones said was to buy the shrubbery. He told the police officers he got a better deal when he paid in cash. The policemen didn't believe him. They suspected that Willie Jones was really a drug courier, and using the federal forfeiture law, they seized the $9,000.
It was the last Willie Jones ever saw of his money, even though he's never been charged with a crime, and there's no indication he ever will be. His money is gone, forfeited to the United States government.
$9,000 is a lot of money to me. I've got a family, and I need this money to support my family and my nursery business.
The police say you're suspicious.
You couldn't tell them where you were going or what nursery you were going to, who you were going to do business with?
I did not tell them. I didn't feel that it was none of their business. I had not committed a crime. I had not did anything wrong.
But you're not a drug dealer?
I'm not a drug dealer.
When they seized his money, Jones thought they were going to arrest him.
But they didn't?
No. They told me that I had not committed a crime, that they didn't have anything to arrest me for.
The way the forfeiture law works, the police officers didn't have to arrest Willie Jones, or for that matter, prove that he was a drug courier. In effect, what they did was arrest his money. And under the forfeiture law, all they needed was probable cause to believe that the money was somehow drug-related. In this case, probable cause meant the following. Willie Jones was carrying a large amount of cash. He was traveling to Houston, according to the federal government, a source city for drugs. His ticket said he was only going to be on the ground an hour, although Jones was carrying an overnight bag and insists it was a ticketing mistake. Finally, Willie Jones couldn't or wouldn't answer their questions. Bo Edwards is a Nashville attorney who's taken on Willie Jones's case. He's also the head of a task force for the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers that's investigating the forfeiture law.
How do you think these two law enforcement agents knew that Willie was carrying that money?
Oh, I know how they knew. The ticket agent for the airline that sold Willie the ticket called them. Drug interdiction units at airports all over the country pay rewards to airport and airline employees for giving them tips when they think someone might be carrying large sums of money or cash or drugs. It's done every day.
We wanted to try and find out for ourselves how easy it is for something like this to happen. And here at the Nashville airport, it took us less than 30 minutes. We had 60 Minutes producer Harry Radliff purchase a round-trip ticket from Nashville to Houston with a quick turnaround. And just like Willie Jones, he paid cash. Less than 15 minutes later, he was approached by two Nashville police officers.
Howdy. How you?
They asked Radliff to identify himself, asked where he was going, why, and would he mind going with them and answering a few questions.
What I'd like to ask you, are you carrying any drugs on your person?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. Do you have anything in your bag?
No.
Do you have any large sums of currency?
Depends on what you define as large sums of currency.
Well, to me, I would say anything over $1,000.
Yes.
When Radliff told them he was with 60 Minutes, the officers backed off. They're the same two officers who stopped Willie Jones, only he wasn't so fortunate. They took his $9,000.
How can they do that?
The DEA is given so much authority, so much power under the forfeiture law. They have been able to get away with it so far.
Aren't they obligated at some point to come back and charge him or try and prove that was drug money?
No. How can they charge him with committing a crime? Willie Jones was a peaceful, law-abiding citizen who had $9,000 taken off of him by a man with a badge.
If you think what happened to Willie Jones is some sort of a fluke, it isn't. According to a 10-month investigation by the Pittsburgh Press, the majority of seizures under the forfeiture law are made without arresting anyone, without ever charging anyone with a crime. But Judge Robert Bonner, the administrator of the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, defends the law and says Willie Jones's money was a good bust.
If you have 60 minutes and you land at the Houston airport, and that's all the time you have there, you're not there to buy bushes and shrubs. The only thing you have time to buy is a drug deal that's already been set up.
You think he's involved in drugs? Prove it.
I think you know there's a difference between the civil asset forfeiture laws that permit us to, if there is probable cause, reasonable grounds to believe that that money was used or intended to be used for drug trafficking, to seize the money.
For me, it's a big jump from that point to the fact that he was down there to buy drugs.
Well, you're not a trained narcotics officer, for one thing, Steve.
You said it allows you to deprive the drug trafficker. In the case of Willie Jones, where's the drug trafficker?
I've described the various factors that would lead, I think, a reasonable and objective person to conclude that the money was drug money.
I'm a reasonable person, and I'm not convinced.
He was given notice. He could have filed a claim, which would have required the government to go forward and put that proof on in a federal district court before a federal judge or jury if Mr. Jones wanted a jury trial on it.
That's exactly what Willie Jones wanted, his day in court. But in forfeiture cases, it's not that simple. First, you've got to post a bond. 10% of the value of the property seized. In the case of Willie Jones, $900, money he didn't have. Jones asked the DEA to waive the bond. The DEA refused. So Willie Jones never even got his day in court. But if he had, he would have discovered that unlike criminal cases where the government has to prove you're guilty, in forfeiture cases, you have to prove you're innocent. I think all of us grow up thinking that you're innocent in this country until you're proven guilty.
The problem in forfeiture law is that doesn't apply. If the government takes your property and you get your day in court, you must prove to the government and the court that the property was not involved in a drug transaction and that you didn't intend for it to be involved in a drug transaction. The Bill of Rights applies to criminal cases. For example, the right to have a lawyer, the right to a trial by jury, that the government must prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. None of those rights apply in a civil case where the government is bringing a civil forfeiture proceeding against your property.
Why has it been made so difficult?
To make it easier for the government to keep the property. If we engaged in a contest, you furnish the property, I make the rules. Am I likely to make the rules easier for you to get your property back? I don't think so.
Billy Munnerlyn knows it's not easy or cheap. The process has left him bankrupt. It's the reason this Las Vegas pilot now makes his living driving a truck. Until October 1989, Munnerlyn ran a successful air charter business. That's when he flew this man, Albert Wright, from Little Rock, Arkansas to Ontario, California.
He looked like a banker and he talked like a banker.
Didn't look like a drug dealer.
No, sir. Absolutely not.
It turned out that Albert Wright is really a convicted criminal. When the charter landed at the Ontario airport, DEA agents were waiting. Wright's baggage, 4 padlocked boxes, were discovered to contain $2.7 million, cash, drug money. Wright and Munnerlyn were both arrested, but the charges against Munnerlyn were dropped for lack of evidence. He thought the whole thing was over until he found out the government had seized his plane.
As I understand it, they said they were arresting the airplane for hauling money. Something I don't understand today.
They were arresting the airplane?
Yes, sir. And that's what the paperwork said. The United States versus 11969 Gates Learjet, which is strange to me. They claimed the aircraft broke a law.
If in the eyes of the law you're an innocent man, one would think your airplane is innocent too.
Exactly.
The legal fiction that applies is that the property has committed a crime. And because it's property, the property has no legal rights.
For 2 years, Munnerlyn's Learjet has been in custody, sitting in a government warehouse while he spent $85,000 in legal fees trying to get it back. And what about his passenger, Albert Wright, the guy who got Munnerlyn into this mess in the first place? Well, the government decided not to prosecute him. When Munnerlyn's case finally did get to court a year ago, a jury in Los Angeles ruled in his favor, but the judge overruled the verdict and ordered another trial. The process has left Munnerlyn broke and bitter. What's happened to you since that plane was taken?
I've lost the business. I've lost my certificate. I filed bankruptcy, and we virtually are penniless.
These aren't isolated cases. Every Wednesday in USA Today, the government publishes a new list of seizures, everything from a few $100s to millions, from a 1967 Dodge Coronet to season tickets for the Utah Jazz. The government says 80% of the seizures go uncontested. Proof, it says, the law must be working.
That's what they say. What they don't say is how many of those cases are people unable to challenge to try to get their money back because they can't afford a lawyer, because they can't afford the bond, because the procedure for making a claim is so complicated and so far removed.
We've had a lot of people say, look, this is just an end run by the Justice Department to get around the Bill of Rights, to convict somebody or punish somebody that they think is involved in criminal activities, but they can't prove it.
Well, not at all. The Supreme Court of the United States has upheld the constitutionality. It said that the asset forfeiture law and the procedures it provides do not violate the Bill of Rights. It's been challenged before.
And so the forfeiture program continues to collect property, the planes and boats, the cars, the ill-gotten gains of the drug trade. Some of it, in a form of poetic justice, ends up being used by law enforcement against the drug dealers in their never-ending war. But the lion's share of the property is auctioned off. The federal government shares the proceeds with local police departments, who help make the seizures in the first place. That's made the forfeiture law one of the most successful weapons in the war on drugs. Last year, police departments all over the country collected more than $600 million from the program.
It's like King John paying the sheriff of Nottingham and his men a bounty for the property they take from the citizens. Works exactly the same way.
Do you think it influences, or do you think it has an impact on the number of seizures?
Of course it does. Of course it does.
By the way, Willie Jones finally got his day in court. In April, a federal judge in Nashville said the U.S. government violated Jones's rights when the policeman seized his $9,000. The judge ordered the government to give it back. And in June, legislation was introduced in Congress to halt asset forfeiture abuses.
Introducing Gillette Clear Gel Antiperspirant. A clear, clean, powerful gel. It goes on smoothly with no white residue to form an invisible barrier of protection. New Gillette Clear Gel Antiperspirant.
Some credit cards charge fat interest rates, but not Discover Card. With Smart Rate, the more you use your Discover Card for purchases, the lower your interest rate can be. Now as low as 14.9%. It pays to Discover.
Chili, fries, coffee.
You better add on some Tums.
On the house.
Except these aren't Tums.
Same thing.
You got them all mixed up.
I told you they're all the same.
Listen to me. Tums has cap.